My wife and I had a dog we adored, we loved for many, many years, named Raymond. And this poem is called Raymond. Do you know this poem? No, okay. You were looking like you knew the poem.
I love the name.
Raymond.
I love the name.
Raymond, and I'll try to project. Jesus comes back like he said he would. A stand-up kind of guy. Unassuming to a fault, but rock solid. The shy type everyone likes, but no one thinks much about one way or the other. Until one evening, during a storm, tooling down I-15 in his beat-up VW Bug, he passes one of those awful two-car smash-ups, and pulling to the shoulder, hops out, strolls past the paramedics and cops, and before they can think to stop him, kneels into all that shattered glass by the gurneys and sheets. And with a few incomprehensible words, in a language nobody's spoken in 2,000 years, coaxes the dead back to life. The little kid gets back his severed leg, and all that blood on the road disappears like a bottle of trick ink. Then everyone starts waking up. Even the drunk in the Chevy, sober for once and looking sheepish as hell. Thank God, he thinks, no one was hurt. Outraged, the cops wrestle Jesus to the mud, snap on the cuffs, and toss him in the back of their squad car. But when they're done helping the two ladies and the kid to their feet and walk back, the cuffs are on the dashboard, and their black K9 lab retriever is curled in the guy's lap. Jesus scratching the fellow behind the ears. Something no one's thought to do since he was a pup. Listen, you know as well as I that none of this is true. Just a story I made up about the world we would like to have been born into. That world where nothing that we love has to die. But the lab retriever I was thinking of was real. Gone from our lives many years now. Our sweet, beloved Raymond. His black, bushy tail twitching happily in his sleep as he'd lie at the foot of our bed the way he used to. Thanks. One of the advantages of you're all poets and you all give readings. One of the virtues of giving a poetry reading, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who does it, is that you're working on your poems that you're going to read. And this poem, that poem, Raymond, which was published 2 or 3 months ago, as I was working on it this morning, as I was putting it together in here, I knew I had known from the beginning, and I know we're all in this same boat, that something wasn't working. I won't go into it at all. Near the end, and I revised it, and I added a little phrase, and that made the reading itself very useful for me. You know, that's nice. I mean, that's a gift we get when we're looking at poems to read, and then you start messing with them, and you know, you make them a little better. So I was delighted to be able to fix a problem that I kind of knew was there, but you know, it's so easy to go into denial. Especially after the stupid thing is already published, you know, then more reason to pretend. This is a poem that I like actually to do with a musician. It's called Solo Monk. A friend of mine a couple of weeks ago sent me a YouTube that he didn't know had existed, and he sent it to me, and it was about Monk. It was an hour-long documentary of Monk's relationship to what was her name? Nan Rothschild, the woman who took him and scores of other musicians under her wing. She was, of course, a millionaire from a millionaire family. She was British. She came to the United States, and she fell in love with Monk and Monk's work, and they were together in that sense. Whether they ever became lovers or not, probably not. But they were lovers in that very real sense. And he sent that to me, and I thought of my poem, Solo Monk. I used to see many, this is decades and decades ago, of course. I worked in Midtown Manhattan in the evening as an usher in a movie theater. And to get to the subway, I was living on the Lower East Side. I'd pass the 5 Spot, and it was that year that Monk got his cabaret license back. And every now and then, when I'd pass, I'd see Monk between sets outside, just pacing back and forth. And he was either in that autistic spectrum or a little schizophrenic. He was in and out of mental institutions for many, many years, would spend a couple of months regaining his mental health. And he was a genius. There was no question that he was a great genius. And so I'd see him bopping back and forth down the street, totally into whatever was going on in his head. And this was one incident one night. And the little story with Charlie Mingus was told to me during that period by the woman who was the day bartender at the 5 Spot, Ricky Cornell, who was a friend of mine. And she told me this little anecdote about Monk and Mingus. And the rest was what I saw. And the poem is called Solo Monk. One day back in the 60s, Monk was sitting at the piano. Charlie Mingus pulling at his coat how Monk should put the word in so the Mingus group could play the 5 Spot, seeing as how Monk's already legendary gig down there was ending. Mingus, all persuasion and cajolery, ran it down for 20 minutes, till he capped it with the comment, "Dig it, Thelonious. You know we black brothers got to stick together." At which point Monk, laconic to a fault, till then he hadn't said a word, turned slowly with a sidewise glance and raised one eyebrow. "Man," he said, "I thought you was Chinese." And evenings, between sets, Monk would pace outside the 5-spot, head cocked to some inner keyboard with that listing gait of his, that wispy black goatee, that rumpled herringbone tweed hat he sported in those days. He'd pace that corner solitary and quixotic in a rapture of exploding chords, all angular and dissonant and oddly phrased. One summer night, a checker cab pulled up as he was so engaged, and Monk, who happened to be passing at that moment, swung back the door, then stepped so quietly and self-effacingly behind it that you would have thought it was his calling. But his ear as ever cocked to that imaginary keyboard, an elegant patrician couple, clubbing, blonde Westchester money, stepped out on 8th Street like an ad for Chivas Regal. As the primped fox sashayed past him in her saffron strapless, tossing back her golden mane, her escort nodded vaguely, not so much as glancing up at that solicitous, albeit altogether funky-looking colored doorman with the goofy hat. A gesture almost too indifferent to be haughty. And with that, they hurried past and disappeared into the 5-spot, having come to hear the legendary Monk, that droll and idiosyncratic piano. The sensation, Whitney Balliet wrote, of missing the bottom step in the dark. Eerie, isn't it, to hear him playing, though he's dead? Mary said, playing Monk the night we heard he had died. And she lowered the dust cover over the turntable as quietly as Monk had shut the door of that checker cab, and turning without sign or gesture had gone off bopping down the street, head cocked as ever to one side and circled by the halo of that rumpled hat. Oblivious, preoccupied, lost in the sweet jazz of the night. Monk on 8th Street at the end of summer in the early 60s. Must have been around 11:55.
That was the 60s.